subclasses part 3, which was spells and magic tattoos. And I've got some initial thoughts about this document, at least from the framework and the theming of it, that I'd love to talk about if y'all also have that. So we've been seeing a long trend of the Unearthed Arcanas and the various class systems and other options that seems to support a cosmological mechanical expansion. So like the idea of the outer planes and the far realms and all that jazz, and the aberrant races and alien races, psionics even, has been like this thing that exists, we know exists. Sometimes we get creatures from the far realms, but not as much in-depth analysis of them. We have that in legacy lore, but in 5e that amount exists, but it's dripped out. We get little snippets of the more specific planar things, and then like when I build worlds, like I have Ionian Feywild and Ionian Shadowfell, and those are based on legacy D&D and then new content from my head. And when we talk about far realms and different fiends and otherworldly forms and all that extra planar stuff that wraps around the material plane, often that can feel like, at least in 5th edition, it's very out there. And it looks like with this document especially, we're beginning to explore more concretely what creatures come from where, and what do they look like, how does this work. And when you start looking at elemental spirits and aberrant spirits and fey spirits and shadow spirits and celestial spirits, and what do those look like, we have it in specific definitions that the players have access to, not just in the monster manual. And that's really exciting, because it's going to open up the world in more concrete ways, not just conceptually.
Yeah, I think that this also, like looking at what most of the spells are, it addresses a lot of the mechanical problems that I've had with certain character concepts. So like the Conjure Woodland Animal spell is like the bane of my existence. And it has to do with the fact that usually players don't know what they're getting into when they use it. So it's one of those things where they'll be like, I summon 18 horses. And then they're like, they're all flanking, right? So they all get an attack roll. What was the attack bonus again? And then they like have to flip through and it's like this whole this whole slowdown and process.
It's a snowball effect, because they like go, okay, I've got this thing. Here's the spell I'm gonna use, snowball, and they start rolling it down the hill, and then go, wait, what? I can get 4 of these, or 1 of these, or 8 of these.
Yeah.
And it says like in the description, your DM will have a list of creatures for you to do. And the DM's like, come on, man! Don't throw me under the bus like that.
My favorite is this happened during my Tomb of Annihilation.
Yeah, oh my god.
First professional thing where it was like, I cast this spell, and then pulled out like 3 manuals, and I'm like, I'm just moving on to the next person's turn. When you find what you want, you tell me. But it was one of those things where summoning is like a thing in fantasy, right? That's like an archetype of I can summon a beast that does things for me. It's the Pokemon model, of like, go Charizard. It's
been there for a
so
long
like
time.
I think that this and they've said this before, like Jeremy Crawford especially, when you can give the stats as part of the spell, like it just helps everybody. It's very clear what your options are. The numbers are all in one place. And the fact that you get to choose what it looks like, even though its abilities are consistent, still lends itself to the specific creativity that you want your players to have to create an enriching story. So I'm with you. I like this.
And I like that it's brought out in that specificity. Sorry, Ian.
That's fine.
I'm gonna let you go right after this. But in the sense that there was this idea, and I think again, Pathfinder, where you were rewarded for your bookishness, that you were rewarded for your study and memorization of the monster manual, of the bestiary. You were rewarded for that, because then you knew, I can summon these monsters because they're this classification and this CR, and therefore I can bring them out. They have this hit dice, I can summon this many, blah, 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 blah. And that was rewarded because you knew what to do. But then you had other people that didn't do all that reading, because why? Where you would create the spell, when other spells in 5th edition, they tell you exactly what you need. Like the dispel description is enough to tell you exactly what you need to do, so you don't have to think about it extra. You don't need extra materials. But then you have a summoning spell, and it's just you now, okay, I summon this. Oh, there's more I have to look up. Oh, and there's this huge lag to that. So if you can just put that in the spell description, now the player can feel more freed to cast the spell because they know what their options are, and it speeds everything up, and it also takes the work off of the DM to then provide them with a list of celestial beings or fey beings that they can summon.
Yeah, I know, it's so interesting to me because I've been playing a lot of Elder Scrolls 4 lately, Oblivion. It's so much fun because, you know, there's so many things you can do. You can have like your strengths and your weaknesses, and I look at it for a bit of like D&D inspiration sometimes, because they knew, I mean, those guys know how to build a really good story. So one of the magic schools, I think, in Oblivion is actually Conjuration, and it's like my weakest magic because I don't have any Conjuration spells. But for people who specialize in it, they like, there's spells like Summon Daedra, which is like a demon kind of thing, and then there's Summon like I don't think there's a celestial one, but there's Summon like little creepy dinosaur monster, and like it's so interesting. But like when you look at D&D without this document, it becomes more of a challenge to figure out what the optimal summon is, and like just the options that you have. So I'm really excited for this because I think that this really expands upon the school, or I think it's called the school of Conjuration magic in D&D. And like you were saying, it gives us more of a look into what these other worlds are like and what kind of creatures are there. So I'm especially excited for the Fae one, of course, because the Fae are the best, and you can't tell me otherwise.
I don't get along. But the other thing is, so I'm not one to ban a lot of options. Like, I'm not like, oh, you want to be a Vidalcan? No! Like, I'll find a way to try to integrate it. Yeah. The only spells I've ever banned are the conjure spells. And that's just because I've never had someone use them and it not be disruptive to the table. In that, it's like, now we're spending a majority of our time looking up stats and monster manuals and rules because they're trying to, again, find the optimal creature to summon, the optimal amount with the optimal positioning. Now they're trying to control 8 different characters when they're already playing a complex caster. It was one of those things. I'm just like, no, you can't take it. Conjure doesn't work. And if you do conjure, you can only summon one thing. And so pick your thing wisely, which is why, again, I like these spells because they summon one thing. You get one additional thing to keep track of. And they're also flavored nicely.
Thank you so much for listening to some of our podcast highlights. This podcast is part of the Darkmoor Podcast Network. If you want to support the content creators, feel free to visit our Patreon. And please, game responsibly.